Help me out. Can anyone tell me why the Daytona 500 is still the biggest race of the year? Because I don't get it. Yes, I understand NASCAR's history at Daytona. I understand the history of the Daytona 500. But have you seen how this race has ended every single year for almost a decade now? 8 years in a row now. This race has ended in overtime or with the last lap crash, sometimes both. 8 years in a row now. A series champion has not won this race. A few weeks ago I did a video looking back at all the last lap passes in the history of this race, and yes, a few times you had a crash at the end, but most of the time it was some of the sport's greatest drivers battling cleanly for a win in the biggest race of the year. But then you get closer to modern day, and now it's basically just the guys who avoided the previous crashes crashing, and whoever avoids that final crash the best is your Daytona 500 champion. Your biggest event of the year should be a showcase of the best drivers and teams fighting for a win, not a lottery where it's just about avoiding crashes. Hey everyone, I'm Will. This year's Daytona 500 left a bad taste in my mouth. It's like I knew what was going to happen before the race even started. I just didn't know who would come out on top. Yet again, it was all about saving fuel to get good track position at the end of the race, and once you got it, it didn't really matter because this race really comes down to avoiding the crashes that inevitably come at the end. Here's my proof that this fuel saving is pointless. Look at your leaderboard with 20 to go before the demolition derby started. Where's our race winner, William Byron? Nowhere to be found in the top 20. Second place, Tyler Reddick is hanging out in the teens, and third place, Jimmy Johnson is nowhere to be found. You see what I mean? They spend 90% of the race fuel saving for what? The guys who ended up finishing up front didn't have great track position. It didn't matter because, like usual, once you got near the end, the leaders started crashing, and they kept crashing, fighting for the lead of the race. And now on the final lap, the whole top 5 gets caught up in it. And here's William Byron. No last lap heroics, no daring pass for the win. It's just, hey look, I avoided the crash and won my second Daytona 500. Unless NASCAR changes the car or the track, or the drivers have a serious change in their behavior, which I highly doubt will happen, I think this is what the Daytona 500 will keep coming down to every year. And that's sad because it's a struggle for so many great drivers to add this win to their resume, since they keep getting caught up in crashes. Think of all the active champions who haven't won this race. Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr. That's not good when some of your best drivers aren't winning your biggest race. It just feels like the 500's lost its luster lately. I mean, I don't like it, but I'm not so sure we should be calling this the biggest race of the season anymore. So, if not Daytona, what is the biggest race of the season? I have an idea.
Gentlemen, there was a time when you called me your
biggest race of the season.
Will you follow me again?
I'm getting too over this shit.
I think it should be the Southern 500. Yeah, I might be biased. I grew up in South Carolina. I've been to Darlington a lot. I'm wearing a Southern 500 shirt for the video, but it's more than that. When the Southern 500 was introduced in 1950, it was the biggest race of the NASCAR season. NASCAR's first 500-mile race at NASCAR's first super speedway. At the time, the first running of the race saw the largest purse in series history, the largest field, the largest crowd, and the longest race. No other race could rival it until the Daytona 500 came onto the scene in 1959. The Daytona 500 is what it is now, but the Southern 500, I'd argue, is the ultimate test of driver skill on the calendar today. And I believe the driver makes more of a difference here than anywhere else. It is very difficult to luck into a win here. No wonder the list of winners is littered with champions, Hall of Famers, some of the sport's best drivers. Even look at Eric Jones in 2022 and Chase Briscoe in 2024. Their equipment made it hard for them to win anywhere else those seasons, but at Darlington, they rose up and made a difference to win. A legendary track, a historic race that always draws a large crowd, and ever since the next-gen car was introduced, I'd argue this place has not put on a bad race. It has all the ingredients in place to be one of the biggest races of the season. Why not the biggest? If the Daytona 500 continues being the way it is, might be time to change the way we look at things.